and Jenny. You're with Julian on the Brown Note and a review of the recently released October 16, very recent, and I think in the cinema briefly as well. Love and Monsters. I've got a big problem with the young adult genre. In fact, I predict that it may be young adult that kills off the endless stream of comic book adaptations and superhero movies. I predict that they're just going to relaunch everything, but choose young teenagers to do all the roles and not acknowledge how well cast the X-Men or the Marvel films have been. Brilliant actors in those roles, and they're just going to keep, I think they'll keep substituting for young adult actors. And it's been a bad decade for young adult. We had the previous decade, we had the big guns of, Twilight and the Hunger Games. Not always great, but certainly much more memorable. And then that was replaced by the likes of the Maze Runner, and then it just got a law of diminishing returns with more and more anemic, derivative, post-apocalyptic, dystopian future films. So I didn't enter Love and Monsters with a great deal of... I thought I was going to turn it off, because I thought I'd just give it a go and I'll see if I like it. The reviews weren't spectacular either. Only about 56% on Metacritic. So that wasn't leading me to believe I was about to enjoy a film at all. South African director Michael Matthews, this is his big label debut film, starring Dylan O'Brien in the lead role as a sad sack teenage lovelorn guy. Already all of this is my worst fear. And he lives underground in a post-apocalyptic future where an asteroid was going to hit the Earth, so he fired lots of missiles at it, and the fallout from those missiles ended up creating, turning a lot of our insects and animals into giants that then destroyed the Earth in a similar way to Pacific Rim. These giant creatures, the biggest ones fought the military and killed off all the military, and they died as well, but now we're left with 10-foot high cockroaches and so on, and it's too dangerous to live outside. So he lives underground in a bunker, and he is the only single person in that bunker. Everyone else is in a couple, and where we open, we're shown how awful it is that he's walking past these naked couples in bed all the time, and I think he's supposed to be about 27 or something, but he's been down there for years, 7 years, so he still acts very much like a teenage boy. All of this is awful. It's like my nightmare from hell. And he decides he's got a problem with cowardice. And he decides after yet another run-in with one of these bugs that's broken into their compound, that where he freezes entirely. He's just got no confidence because of the traumatic way his parents died at the hands of these bugs. He can't fight, so he's just a chef making macaroni soup. He decides that he's going to travel 80 miles above land to meet his girlfriend from 7 years ago, who he last saw on the last day that they were all free, played by Jessica Henwick, who I picked out in the movie Underwater as being the breakout star of that film. Not Kristen Stewart. She was far more charismatic and interesting, and again, I totally believe she's going to become a huge star. British actress. Beautiful British actress, and she's got it as far as I'm concerned. I see her being in a much more elevated films, although this is a pretty fair budget work, to be honest. Now, everything about this film points to me not liking it, and I actually kind of loved it. I don't know what... Everything that I thought would be... I thought this film would be one of two things. I thought it would be... like the young adult films like Maze Runner, very dour, self-serious, morose, hung up on teenage love. Or I thought it would be bombastic, broad humour, lots of pyrotechnics going off and yelling and running around and screaming. And it's neither of those films. It is a surprisingly soulful and thoughtful film. I actually found the lead character to be engaging, which I didn't expect at all. I think Dylan O'Brien, he makes you warm to him, and as his courage grows, he grows from this kid who that the astonishingly gorgeous Jessica Henwick, who herself has become the leader of her little group 80 miles away. She is far, far too much of a woman for him. I could relate this film to Slow West because we were talking about that awful Cody Smith McPhee in a review of 2067 recently. In the film Slow West, he starts as this lovelorn teenager who travels the Wild West from Scotland to find his love, who was in another film recently, who I just saw, and it wasn't a very good film. I wonder who that was. I wish I could remember while I'm talking about this, because she's in another film and it wasn't very good, and it wasn't her fault. The one with Russell Crowe in the traffic. She's the star of that film, and she's got the most. I will review that next week. She's got one of the most annoyingly written lead characters I've ever seen. That film, the Cody Smith McPhee character didn't change from start to finish. All of his adventures in the West never made him a different person. This time around, the character really, credibly, believably becomes, by the end of the film, someone you yourself respect and could see with this woman. Because he's so much more courageous and thoughtful and alive and dynamic. You'd think, wow, you'd be impressed if this guy turned up. And they don't go down the path of, boy and girl meet and have a happy relationship at the end. It's all done very adult. And he sort of comes to terms with the fact that obviously 7 years of your life, she's had other relationships, she's moved on from him, she's a different person. All of it's handled really adult. And I found the progress where it didn't rely on them getting together at the end, and it doesn't. And instead flipping back to the things that are important. He wanted to leave behind this world that he'd grown up in. But he comes to realise they're his family and they're his friends. And that is the most important thing that he has left on this planet where 95% of the people have died. That is what he should be fighting for. And it's one of the best coming of age stories that I've seen in the modern era, because everything rings true. I thought the special effects were wonderful because they're very understated. They don't use them continually throughout. They use sort of creeping dread a lot in the film. And when they happen, they're big and colourful and really imaginative. The crab at the end is wonderful. Another thing I like about this film is there are no villains. Everyone has their own reasons for being like they are, and they're all good people, including many of the monsters. It doesn't take a prejudiced view against the monsters either. And you can see the way that some humans, there are some nasty humans, but a very small number, who manipulate the monsters, how awful they are, not the monsters. The monsters are just being animals. And some of the visuals are stunning of the creature attacks. And there's some really thoughtful scenes where he meets this robot and sees these floating jellyfish. And she projects his mother's face on her face. And he starts hugging the robot. It's really moving. So I thought this was a wonderful film. It's got a lot more going for it than I expected. I think that it is, it's only a tiny bit slight. All of the characters that they come across are good. All of the interactions are good. The script is good. The visuals are wonderful. It's understated. It's thoughtful. It's nice. It's easy to watch. And I found it much more moving than I expected. So I'm going to give Love and Monsters an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a really good film and well worth watching. Love and Monsters, 8 out of 10. And this is in tribute to Toots Hibbert, who died on the 11th of September. And I never